Welcome back to my channel, Famous and Fabulous. Eric Clapton is known as one of the best guitar players ever, but his life story mixes amazing musical success with really hard personal problems. His fights with drugs and drinking, his messy relationship with Pattie Boyd, and the sad loss of Hisson Connor show us a man who went through very dark times and tried to find hope through his music. In the exciting but crazy world of the 1960s, Eric Clapton was becoming one of rock's biggest stars. With bands like the Yardbirds, Cream, and later his own music, he was getting famous for his amazing guitar skills and soulful blues style. But being famous, as he would soon find out, was both good and bad. Clapton got caught up in the wild rock and roll lifestyle, a world where trying new things wasn't just okay, people expected it. It was a time when drugs and alcohol seemed just as important to the music scene as the music itself. And for Clapton, the pull of escaping from all the growing pressure was too strong to fight. At first, alcohol gave him that escape, making the worries and fears go away that bothered him even though he was successful. But as he got more famous, the demands and pressure got bigger, and the short relief that alcohol gave him wasn't enough anymore. As the years went by, the simple joy of having a drink to relax became a hunger that he couldn't control, and that took over his life. Alcohol's power soon led him down an even darker road. Heroin, a drug that promised a deeper, more complete escape. For Clapton, heroin became more than just a way to cope. It became something he couldn't stop thinking about. His addiction was so bad that people say he spent $16,000 a week on heroin, an incredible amount even for a rock star. The drug separated him from his friends, family, and bandmates, building a wall around him that nobody could see, but nobody could break through. He was impossible to reach, stuck in a jail he had made for himself. As his need for drugs got worse, his musical skills started to get worse too. Clapton, who was once a respected guitarist who could amaze audiences, now found himself having trouble performing. His once legendary presence on stage got dimmer, his passion dulled by the fog of drugs. He missed shows, messed up performances, and lost the respect of people who once looked up to his work. His career, once full of promise, seemed headed for a tragic ending. Friends and other musicians watched helplessly as Clapton's addiction got completely out of control, getting more worried with each failed concert and missed chance. The man who had amazed audiences with his soulful playing was disappearing, and there didn't seem to be any way to reach him. Then, in 1971, came the moment everything broke. Clapton's performance at a London concert was so terrible that it forced the people closest to him to step in. They came together desperate to save the man they admired and loved. The intervention was raw and painful, with friends telling him about the damage his addiction had done to his life, his career, and their friendships. Their words cut through the fog of addiction, and for the first time, Clapton saw how far he had fallen. His loved ones begged him to get help, and with their support, Clapton went into treatment. It was a turning point, but the journey to getting clean was far from over. Heroin was only one part of Clapton's battle. While he managed to break free from its hold, he soon found himself caught by another enemy: alcohol. Getting clean from heroin had left an empty space, and Clapton, not ready to face life's challenges without something to lean on, turned to drinking. Alcohol filled the emptiness left by heroin, becoming a new addiction that was just as destructive. This time, his addiction was even more sneaky, creeping into every part of his life and hurting his relationships and career even more. Clapton may have escaped heroin's grip, but his battle with addiction was far from over. The road to recovery was proving to be a twisting, dangerous path, one that would test every bit of his strength and willpower. While fighting his addiction battles, Eric Clapton's personal life was a storm of emotions, wants, and heartbreaks. Even as he was building his career as a guitar god, Clapton was struggling with a love so strong it almost destroyed him. He had fallen deeply, obsessively for Pattie Boyd, the wife of his close friend and legendary Beatle George Harrison. To Clapton, Pattie wasn't just a beautiful woman. She was his inspiration, an impossible dream, a living example of everything he couldn't have. His love for her burned through his music, most famously in Layla, a song that drips with raw longing and desperation. Released in 1970, Layla was Clapton's plea, a way to turn his heartbreak and frustration into something that would last forever. But for years, his love wasn't returned, a painful reminder of the happiness just out of his reach. Their story took a new turn in 1979 when Pattie divorced Harrison. By then, her marriage with George had gone through its own storms, and Pattie, tired from years of unhappiness, finally turned to Clapton. They got married, but the fairy tale romance Clapton had dreamed of was quickly replaced by a much darker reality. Clapton's addiction was getting worse, and his marriage to Pattie was overshadowed by his drinking and the crazy behavior it caused. The same intensity that had driven him to write Layla became an unpredictable, sometimes scary force in their lives. Clapton was no longer just the loving boyfriend, he was an addict, unpredictable, unreliable, and often impossible to reach. The man who had once promised her the world was now lost in his own darkness, leaving Pattie to wonder if the man she'd fallen for was beyond saving. Their marriage became a tragic love story filled with challenges that pushed Pattie to her limits. Clapton's alcoholism turned him into a stranger, one who would have fits of anger and act recklessly, a man who went back and forth between adoration and neglect. Pattie would later tell stories about his abusive behavior, both with words and physically, remembering the painful reality of living with someone whose love for her seemed less important than his addiction. His drinking fed his insecurities, leading to jealous accusations, mood swings, and worst of all, cheating on her. The man who'd once worshipped her was now someone she couldn't recognize. A man whose self-destructive behavior left scars that time alone couldn't heal. Clapton's affairs were another source of pain for Pattie, each one chipping away at the trust and love she had tried so hard to build. One affair resulted in the birth of his son Connor with Italian model Lori Del Santo in 1986. For Pattie, this was a betrayal that cut to the core, an open wound that no apology could close. Clapton's betrayal wasn't simply a result of his addiction. It was a reminder of the deep problems that addiction had made worse, a sign of the emotional distance that had grown between them. By 1988, after years of trying to keep their marriage together, Pattie had reached her breaking point. She filed for divorce, listing his alcoholism and cheating as the final straws in a marriage that had been beaten up beyond repair. For Clapton, losing Pattie was a crushing blow. But at the time, he was too lost in his addiction to fully understand how serious his actions were. The woman he had once seen as his salvation was gone, leaving him to face themes he had made of their relationship. Their love story, which had started with such passion, had become a warning story, a reminder of how addiction can twist love into something you can't recognize, of how even the strongest bonds can be broken by problems that aren't dealt with. And yet, even after all the heartbreak, Clapton's memories of Pattie would haunt him, a constant reminder of the love he had wasted while trying to find temporary relief from his own pain. In 1991, Clapton faced an unthinkable tragedy. His 4-year-old son, Connor, whom he had with Italian model Lori Del Santo, died after falling from the 53rd floor window of a New York City apartment. The loss devastated Clapton, throwing him into deep grief. In the aftermath, he wrote Tears in Heaven, a touching song that expressed his sadness and longing. This period became a turning point for Clapton. The pain of losing Connor forced him to face his addictions head-on. He got treatment and embraced sobriety, realizing that to honor his son's memory, he needed to change his life. Embracing sobriety was a challenging journey for Clapton. He threw himself into his music, putting his emotions into his art. In 1998, he founded the Crossroads Center in Antigua, a rehabilitation facility aimed at helping others overcome addiction. This project was proof of his commitment to sobriety and his desire to help others facing similar struggles. Clapton's music during this period showed his personal growth. Albums like Pilgrim, 1998, showcased a more thoughtful and mature artist, one who had faced his demons and came out with a renewed sense of purpose. Today, Eric Clapton no longer hides from talking about his darkest hours. Time and recovery have allowed him to look back with a mixture of regret, pain, and acceptance. He speaks openly about the suffering his addictions caused to those closest to him and the destructive choices he made along the way. He doesn't hide from the truth. He knows that this action's left deep scars on others, most heartbreakingly on Pattie Boyd, the woman he once loved but ultimately hurt. Clapton is honest about the guilt he feels for the years lost to addiction, for the moments he sacrificed for his cravings, and for the memories he missed because he was too clouded to live them. His journey has made him painfully aware of the toll addiction takes not just on the addict, but on everyone who cares about them. And yet, even in the middle of this sea of regret, Clapton speaks passionately about the possibility of forgiveness and redemption. His message is one of hope, not just for himself, but for others who are struggling. For Clapton, Forgiveness is not just about asking for pardon from others. It's about forgiving himself, a process that has taken him years to embrace. He believes that people are capable of change, that life offers a chance to rebuild what was broken, to fix even the most damaged bonds. Clapton has come to realize that although he can't erase the past, he can use his story as a beacon for those who feel trapped, showing them that it's possible to rise from the ruins of one's own making. Clapton's story is a powerful example of strength. Despite how deep his despair was, despite the destruction his addiction caused, he has found a path back to himself. Today, he continues to share his music and his story, finding purpose in helping others navigate the dark waters of addiction. Through his advocacy work and his music, Clapton has become a voice for those who feel voiceless in the grip of addiction, reaching out with empathy born from his own painful experiences. His own journey has given him a sense of responsibility to help others, a duty he fulfills with quiet humility and a deep understanding of the battles that still rage for so many. When Clapton thinks about his life, he speaks of music as his salvation. To him, music was more than a career or a talent. It was a lifeline. In his most hopeless moments, music provided a way to process his pain and to communicate feelings he could never say in words. Through songwriting and guitar, he channeled his anguish, his regret, and his longing for peace. Songs like Tears in Heaven, written after the tragic loss of his son Connor, allowed him to face his sorrow and in a way begin to heal. For Clapton, music became a path to forgiveness, a way to express his sorrow, seek redemption, and ultimately find some measure of inner peace. Eric Clapton's journey is proof of the unstoppable power of the human spirit. Through immense talent, devastating loss, and a relentless pursuit of redemption, he has created a legacy that goes far beyond the limits of his music. Today, his life offers a powerful story of hope, serving as a reminder that even in the face of life's greatest struggles, there's always the potential for healing. For Clapton, redemption is not a destination, but an ongoing journey. One he continues to walk with courage, strength, and a quiet determination to make peace with his past. In sharing his story, he offers a hand to others, encouraging them to find strength in their battles, to seek forgiveness, and perhaps most importantly, to believe that even the most broken lives can find a way back to wholeness.